Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Mindfuel, where we are helping amateur endurance athletes train their brains as consciously as they train their bodies. Our guest today is Thibaut Halleux, a friend and former colleague who is one of the most genuine lovers of cycling, and especially ultra cycling, that I know. And somehow, with a very intense job, a wife, 2 young kids, and some challenges with injury, Thibaut still finds time to train and gets so much joy from the experience of these long-distance cycling events that I can't wait for him to share more today about his perspective on confidence and specifically how to change your self-talk in the moment and get the results that you need. So with that, welcome to Mindfuel, Thibaut.
Hi, Laura. Thanks a lot for having me. It's really a pleasure and also a great pleasure to see Mindfuel come to life. I know how passionate you were about this project, so it's really with a great pleasure to
Thank
be
you
here
so
with you
much.
today.
You had some really valuable input to this, so it's really fun to see it come full circle and have you here to tell your story. Thibaut, we start every episode here by asking our guests to introduce themselves, not by telling us what you do, because we're going to get to that in more detail, but by explaining who you are. So how might your wife or your kids describe you?
That's a very good question. I'd say people say that I'm quite a passionate person who go really all in all of my areas of interest, whether it's like my hobbies, my passions, my work, up to a point where I think sometimes my wife thinks that I am stubborn in a way, because whenever I have an idea or a project in mind or a goal to achieve, I'm really relentlessly focused on achieving it. And it's really difficult for someone to change my mind or to picture a different point of view.
Well,
And
I definitely relate to that with your work. After working with you, I saw it, and certainly from watching you in other aspects of life. And it's so funny, isn't it, how some of the things that make us really able to do the stuff we want to do are also some of the things that often challenge us or challenge other people in our lives, because that passion becoming stubbornness can be a really tricky thing to manage.
exactly.
And I touched on this a little bit already, Thibaut, but can you go into more detail about what your relationship to sport is?
So I would say back in the days. So first of all, I was at a very young age exposed to cycling. That's going to be the hot topic of the day. Thanks to my father. My father was Belgian, and you may be aware that cycling in Belgium is like the national sport. It's as popular as soccer can be popular, in Brazil. So from my very young age, every time there was like a main race, the Paris-Roubaix or the Tour de France, the Giro d'Italia, my father was spending hours watching the race, and we wouldn't do any activity before the race was over. So I thought, hey, if we don't do any activity, if we don't go out, if we don't play together, maybe I should just get some interest into it. So I remember back in the 90s, yes, watching the achievements of the great cyclists like, Miguel Indurain, Marco Pantani from Italy, and those guys. I got really hooked into the cycling as a whole because I was really amazed by what those athletes were able to achieve, really pushing themselves to their limits on a daily basis for like 3 weeks in a row. I was really amazed. And at first, I did not practice cycling extensively. I was just doing some mountain biking with friends. I've experienced multiple sports when I was young. I played soccer, basketball, tennis, and I got hooked when I was a teenager on badminton. I played at a competitive level. I loved the sport because it was for me quite holistic. It was at the same time very physical, very intense, because during a game, your heart rate beats is like 180 minimum. So
I didn't
super.
realize that.
And at the same time, it's very intellectual, I would say, because you have to play in a very accurate way. You have to analyze how your opponent is playing. You have to build your own strategy based on your strengths, but you have to also identify what are the strengths of the opponent, what are his weaknesses, and constantly adapt while physically pushing yourself to the limit. So very fun. And speaking more about endurance sports, when I graduated from high school, after that I studied at the uni for 5 years. I kind of stopped sport as a whole and exercising as a whole due to the busy life that came with the studies. But I had the opportunity at some point to spend 6 months in Norway, where I got hooked on cross-country skiing. It was a first for me, and I loved it straight away because it was a way for me to really disconnect from the studies, disconnect from the city life, because Norway has incredible infrastructures when it comes to cross-country tracks, and so on. So I could go through the mountains, through the beautiful Norwegian landscapes for hours on my skis and just contemplating the beauty of nature without thinking about anything else but skiing, going forward, and enjoying the moment.
Sounds so nice.
And then when I came back to France, I started running not at a competitive level, but just to keep myself fit. I was just running like 5K, 10K, nothing more, mostly for fun. And I came to a point where in 2011, a stupid accident. I got caught on the Atlantic coast. I got caught in what we call the shore break, which are those very strong waves that break really at the shore. And I broke my femur in a very bad way. It was quite a nasty injury, I would say. I went into surgery. And of course, with such an injury, it takes a very long time to recover. Physical rehab is very long. And it was really clear for me that running wouldn't be an option anymore for at least 6 to 12 months. So I had to find another way to exercise and also to further regain strength. So that's why I started to cycle again. Because cycle doesn't have any impact on the body, and it's quite a smooth way, I would say, to rebuild leg strength. And I used it first as a way to regain strength and go through the physical rehab program that I had. But very quickly, I started to cycle with friends, and we were doing like 10 kilometers ride, 20 kilometers ride, 50 kilometers ride. And I was always looking for increasing the distance just to see how far I could go, how fast I could go, because I really felt kind of the same feelings that I had experienced with cross country skiing in Norway. You're in the outdoor, just going forward, enjoying the moment. Nothing matters but pushing the pedals and refueling. So it was really peaceful. And at the same time, it was a way for me to challenge myself, to go beyond my limits, to explore what I could do, physically speaking, on the bike.
Very nice. It sounds like these sports where you just have to be really present with your body and the activity are the ones that speak the most to you.
Definitely. And speaking about increasing the distance, eventually I got interested by bikepacking rides, which are basically long distance, self-supported rides at your own pace. For me, it was again a way to explore the world because I always loved traveling. So I'm also through cycling, I'm combining two passions, cycling and traveling. And bikepacking, I got hooked into it because what I loved into bikepacking is that it's not only about cycling, it's about many other dimensions that you need to control and master because you're on your own. So you have to manage your route, you have to manage your resupplies in terms of food, water, and everything. You have to be able to deal with any mechanical that you could have. You are prone to weather change and you have to adapt to that. I felt that for me, it was the right way to go further into cycling and also into, I would say, more competitive cycling because across the years, I've never been the strongest rider. I've never been the physically strongest athlete in all sports I've competed, but I knew that mentally, I didn't feel that I had any limit. So I thought maybe I'm not the strongest, but with bikepacking, with long distance riding, and ultimately tricycling, that's not necessarily the physically strongest person who can finish a race, who can perform. It's mostly the person who's able to, of course, go fast, but also manage what's coming at him, manage the unexpected, manage all dimensions of long distance cycling.
Absolutely. It's interesting you bring this up because I've been following ultra running a lot this summer with some of the big events, and the women are doing incredibly well. And I know some of that is just we have more information about managing our bodies. There's been more years of women training now, but I think exactly what you're saying, physically, it's proven women aren't as strong or don't have the muscle mass that men can carry. However, managing their own bodies over these ultra endurance events and being able to stay with it mentally, manage their pace, we're really seeing that pay off. So it sounds similar to kind of how you've been thinking about managing the strengths that you have and using those to complete what you set out to do.
Exactly, yes. And so when it comes to a more competitive aspect of the sport, I've mostly participated in the past to two types of events. I've been self-challenging myself, I would say, with long distance rides that I would ride at a race pace, for example. I've been riding from Paris to Brussels, 350 kilometers in 15 hours, things like that. I've been riding through France in between cities, like from Nantes to Bordeaux, for example, as well. I've been touring in Belgium. I've been touring in Taiwan. It was an absolutely amazing experience, by the way, especially because on top of all the aspects of the cycling thing, I had to blend into a completely different culture, which was another component to manage as part of the tour.
Yeah.
And then I also started to challenge myself by registering to ultra races between 600 kilometers and 1,200 kilometers, always self-supported. Because in ultra cycling, now you have different types of races. You have like supported races where you can have a full team assisting you with food supplies, with a physiotherapist ready to take care of you if you have any physical injury or whatsoever, and self-supported races where the title says it all. You're on your own. You need to manage everything that can happen to you. And so I've been really involved in those events because it's really, from my point of view, where the fun belongs. Because again, pushing the pedals is one thing, but having to manage the unexpected is even more fun for me.
You like the elements of surprise. And so one of these events that you've done recently was the 500-kilometer race across Paris. And this is really where I want to spend a lot of our time today because you had quite an interesting experience, I think, particularly mentally. But before we get into that, how and why did you choose this event to do?
That's a very good question. So 3 years ago, I had a very bad back injury. For 2 decades, I had a herniated disc in my lower back, and all of a sudden the disc moved a little bit and started to compress the nerves and my spinal cord. And within minutes, I had one leg that was completely paralyzed. I couldn't feel anymore. I couldn't walk anymore. So I went through an emergency surgery to fix it. And when I woke up, the first question I asked to the surgeon was, when can I go ride my bike again? And the surgeon looked at me, was like, you should be happy. You can still walk. I'm like, okay, that sounds bad. But I thought, no, he cannot be serious. I've been through very difficult races. So physically, I can push myself again and I can go through a very intense physical rehab program. And in no time, I will recover mobility, strength, and control of my leg. But it didn't happen this way. It took me, I think, 2 years to properly get back on the bike because nerve damage is extremely slow to heal. I could see progress on a quarterly basis, not even on a monthly basis, even though I was like working hard on a daily basis on all the mobility, self-awareness exercises that my physiotherapist was giving me. I couldn't see any progress. I tried to completely readapt my bike fit to deal with that. It helped a little bit. I tried some long distance rides just to see if this issue I had with my leg could really be a blocker for cycling. And for 2 years it was. After 2 years, it was still an issue and I was kind of like losing hope. I was starting to think that maybe cycling is going to be a thing of the past for me. Because of that injury, I would not be able to perform anymore. I would just be able to like ride to the bakery to pick up some bread with my bike, and that's it. Long distance, maybe. I need to forget about it. And I thought before giving up, I need to push myself one more time. And I thought the best way for me to really focus on giving the best of me was to register to a race. And so 8 months before that race that happened in April, I was amongst the first registrants.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, it's now or never. Well, either the race goes well and there's hope, or if it doesn't go well, okay, I will conclude that I need to find probably another sport.
I'm getting a sense of the stubbornness that you spoke about earlier, but in a really nice way. So when you finally got to that start line, actually tell us a little bit about the training process and then about the start line and what was going through your mind and how your body was feeling.
I did the best I could for the training process. I had 8 months to train, but given the busy life I have with work, with the family life, the business trips and so on, it was difficult to stick to the plan. Actually, one thing I've learned with the experience is that you shouldn't feel guilty if you're missing 1 or 2 workouts. Because in the past, I had like very strict and structured training plans up to 6 to 12 months ahead of a race. And whenever I was missing a workout, because I was sick, because I was a bit tired, because I was too busy, I felt guilty. And then I was like entering a downward spiral mentally, and it was really bad. And for these past months before the race, I really convinced myself that it was okay to miss a few workouts. If I'm missing a workout or two, like 5 months ahead of the race, will it make a difference on the day? Absolutely not.
And sometimes perhaps a positive difference in giving you a bit more rest and a moment to adapt to the other training you have and come in stronger to the next workout. So I think that's really wise advice.
Yes. So physically speaking, I did my best to come prepared to the race. Mentally speaking, for me, it was not too much of an issue because mathematically speaking, I knew I could do it. 500 kilometers with a 48 hours time limit, no problem at all. I've been riding 600 kilometers in 40 hours in the past, so that was okay, really okay. But the day I came to the race, the day before, we had this bike check process where you go through with your bike so that the organization of the event checks that your bike is compliant with the regulation that you have. As it is self-supported, you had mandatory items that you had to carry with you at all
Okay.
times, like, emergency blankets, whistles, spare parts to fix any mechanical that could happen on the way and things like that. And I was queuing for the bike check and I was looking at riders around me, and everything I was seeing was that all riders there, they were super fit, super strong, armed with minimalist aero bikes designed to perform. And I was there with my little ambition, with my long distance bike that is not like the state of the art of what the bike industry can provide today. And I thought, it don't belong to this world anymore. It became way more competitive across the past 2 or 3 years. And I thought, I don't belong to this world anymore. And for a moment, I thought, I'm just going to take the next train home and call it a day because that's not where I should be.
No.
And the way I dealt with that is that I started to refocus on my own goal. The why I was there to race. Was it to compete against those super strong guys? No, because I knew even if I was super trained, I wouldn't have a chance. Was it to be part of the top 20, top 50 riders? No, not necessarily. The why I was there was for me to prove myself that I'm still able to complete a long distance race.
And enjoy it, right?
Yes, exactly. And it became clear that, in a way, I was riding a different race than those guys who were there to perform. I was racing my own race. And
I
that's
think
where I
this is
managed
so
to
important.
split the
I think this is one of the beauties of endurance sports too, is that sure, it can be a race between people, but for most of us, it's some competition with ourselves. And that could be to not go too hard. It could be to get a time goal. It could be to say, I just want to see if my body can do this. And no one else needs to know or care. But you're right, it can be so easy to get sucked into the environment or listening to what other people's goals are or projecting what they might be based on what you saw, like super aero bikes. And yeah, to have the strength to come back to why am I here and what do I want out of this? It's hard, but it's so important.
And that's the beauty, I think, of ultra cycling and ultra distance as a whole, is that everyone has a different motivation. So that's really a great way to challenge yourself in quite a benevolent environment, I would say, because I've always been a big fan of the ultra cycling community, where it's really about sharing. There's, of course, a competitive aspect, but it's really about sharing experiences, enjoying the long distance riding. And that helped me as well to challenge myself in a benevolent and safe environment. Also because I knew since the race was around Paris, if worst case scenario, I had a serious injury, I wouldn't be too far from home. My wife could pick me up. I wouldn't be too far from a good hospital. Whereas in some races in the past, I was riding through the middle of nowhere, for example, in France or in Italy. And in those times, if I had the back injury I had 3 years ago, in the middle of nowhere, things could have been really bad.
Yeah.
So that was peace of mind for me.
It's amazing the way that you were able to shift and just keep everything in perspective. And as you were then going through the ride, how did that continue to evolve in your mind? And especially inevitably, no matter how well trained we are in ultra events, we will get to some dark places or feel, oof, not sure we can keep going. So what was that experience like for you?
So the 41st kilometers were a little bit tough because it was an individual start where one rider was starting every 30 seconds and we were starting by a registration order. And since I was one of the very first persons to register, I was starting amongst the first. And for the first 40 kilometers, basically, I was just being passed by those super strong riders. Like they were like one by one, So I had to really focus mentally on not noticing that, on really refocusing myself on my goal, going forward, doing a lot of visualization on what I want to achieve and when during the race. Because I do a lot of visualization before the race and during the race, not only for me to be prepared for the unexpected, but also for me to, let's say, split the long distance race into smaller races bits. For me, a 500 kilometers race, it's basically 10 races of 50 kilometers.
Okay.
I'm really visualizing the next 50 kilometers all the time. And it helps for me to focus not on the big race, not on the big challenge that I have ahead of me, but to focus on just achieving small goals that eventually will lead to achieve the big goal.
Yeah.
And to your point, I came to some dark places across the race because it was a race with 48 hours time limit. And my plan was initially to have a break in the middle of the night to sleep like for 3 hours, but I was doing so much visualization that I couldn't fall asleep. I tried to, but my brain was still thinking about what's coming next on the route, on visualizing the next 50 to 100 kilometers that I couldn't shut it down. So I was fully awake. Even though my body felt tired and I was telling my body and my brain to fall asleep and shut down, I couldn't. So I've lost a lot of time doing this. So that's a lesson learned for the next race. So I decided in the end not to sleep and to keep on riding. So in terms of exhaustion, I've been through a difficult time at the end of the night. I would say usually, during those like end of night hours between 4 to 6 in the morning, where it is the most difficult because the mind usually believes that it's time for the body to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And that's when you really need to consciously speak to yourself. That's the trick I found to stay awake and also to keep going forward, because it's those 2 hours, 4 to 6 or 3 to 5, depends on every rider, where you can really lose or be successful during a race. Because that's when also you feel the most tired, where the mind feels the most tired. So if you let yourself being overwhelmed by bad emotions, by the fact that after roughly 300 kilometers, you're starting to feel some pain or some discomfort, that's when the mind is going to say, okay, I'm going to call it a day. I cannot
Yeah.
cope with those like negative signals, pain, discomfort.
Yes.
And so I really had at that time to speak to myself, and I was really telling myself, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. No matter what, you're going to do it. That's okay. You've been there before. You've been riding already for half of the race for 250 kilometers. So that's no problem. You've done half. You're going to do half. So that's not a problem at all. That helped a lot. The other problem I had is that fueling is quite a critical aspect in ultra cycling, because you're burning a lot of calories. You need to eat a lot of calories to keep on performing. And the problem is that the body and your stomach is not designed to process like 60 to 100 grams of carbs an hour. And after like 350 kilometers, I was really very confident that I would finish the race within the time limit. I started to have severe stomach pain out of the blue because of my stomach being upset of having to process too much carbs for the last 24 hours or so. And all of a sudden, yes, super sharp stomach pain. I barely could ride my bike because, just leaning forward was putting more
That
pressure on the
sounds
stomach.
awful.
And I knew it could happen, but it came out of the blue. So I was not prepared for that. And so at that moment, again, I refocused on what are the solutions to deal with that. And I was applying those solutions, which is basically, it's quite simple. Just stop eating carbs. You switch to salty food. You start drinking more water to dilute the carbs and things like that. And then I was self-talking to my stomach. You're going to be okay. I got you. Here's some water. It's going to help you. Here's some salty food. It's going to be easier for you to digest. And it helped. It helped a lot. And I thought overall, speaking to myself, it helped me to really refocus on the fact that it's my mind that controls my body and not the other way around. So it's important for my mind to process the signals the body is sending, discomfort, pain, so that you can take it into account into your rest strategy, into applying some corrective actions to minimize the pain or the discomfort and the root cause. But it's at the end of the day, it's the mind that is going to tell the body to perform and not the other way around.
No, you're so right. And I think it's really cool to hear this story because we read that, we know the research says that, but at least for me, until I can actually experience that, I don't always believe it. So, Thibaut, you've mentioned that you do a lot of visualization and preparation for an event by already thinking how you're going to break down the goal into smaller steps. How did you learn to do this? And are there other things that you consciously prepare mentally before your big cycling events?
So the two best advice I got from ultra cycling riders are, first, you need to be prepared for the unexpected, because You will have a plan, and it's very rare that the whole race will go as you planned it. No matter what will happen, but you may face a weather change that you were not expecting. You may get a mechanical in the middle of nowhere at 2 a.m. in the morning in a dark forest. You're planning to resupply, in 50 kilometers because you know that there is a bakery in a small village. You arrive in the village and the bakery is for some reason closed. So you have to ride another 50 kilometers to the next bakery, for example, to the next resupply point, without water, without food. You need to be ready for that. You need to have a plan. And visualization for me, it's not only about having a plan to cope with the unexpected. It's about being able to execute the plan under pressure, under stress. I can really picture myself. For example, I'll take the example of having a puncture. It's easy to fix a puncture when you're at home, sitting on your couch. Fixing a puncture in the middle of the night when there is absolutely no light, you just have like a headlamp, it's raining, your fingers are completely frozen, and you have to take your tire out, fix the puncture, and it's a different story.
Yes.
And I'm constantly pre-race visualizing those kind of scenarios so that if it happens during the race, my brain goes into like autopilot mode and I just know what to do.
We can teach ourselves without actually doing it with some level of visualization. It's incredible.
Exactly. What the mind can achieve in those situations, in those difficult situations are incredible. When the body wants to give up, the mind can really kickstart the body to perform again. And the second thing is be prepared for discomfort, because when you're riding very long distance, you will get some form of discomfort. That's for sure. It will not be a walk in the park. So you need to be prepared for that. You need to be mentally prepared to accept some level of discomfort or pain.
And so you're planning to do Race Across Paris again. How will you prepare for this mentally and prepare yourself for that discomfort again?
I think what I've learned again through this race is that now my physical aptitude is my limiting factor. I know that mentally speaking, it's not really humble to say that, but I'm strong enough to perform in those races. And if I want to perform better, faster, I need to be more consistent and more structured in the way I physically train. It's going to be a challenge because of the busy life that we all have. But now I know that if I want to really perform better, I know where to focus. And I've regained the confidence that I can perform again.
Congratulations. I mean, coming back from a broken femur, a slipped disc, major surgery, to have that confidence is incredible. And if I'm honest, I think figuring out how to train physically is in some ways a slightly easier battle than trying to train the brain if you don't naturally have that strength. So it seems like you're coming at all of this from a position of huge strength, and you have a lot of evidence to back yourself up that you can continue to improve and achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And so Thibaut, what a story. If you could leave the audience with one final thought on confidence and on specifically self-talk, what would it be?
Trust yourself. Trust your ability in performing, because I think self-trust is the foundation of performance. If I had listened to other people in the past years, I wouldn't have been able to perform on this race. If I had listened to the surgeon who was telling me that I couldn't cycle anymore, if I had listened to some people who were saying, now with your past injuries, that's really not a good idea to do this race, blah, 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 I would be nowhere. And because I had this self-talking awareness, and also the awareness that my mind was the driver force, it gave me the confidence that I could challenge myself and I could perform again. So my main advice is don't let negative thoughts overwhelming you. The human being is capable of amazing things, and the mind is the driver force, definitely.
What beautiful advice, and I couldn't agree more. Thibaut, if anyone wants to continue this conversation with you or follow your long rides, how can they connect with you?
They can connect with my Instagram account. I'm not extremely active, but from time to time, I'm sharing some pictures from my rides.
Fantastic. Well, I enjoy following you, so I can definitely recommend that to everyone. And as always, we'll put those details on our website as well as in the show notes for today. If you like this episode, please do like and subscribe here on YouTube or on Spotify. And of course, if you have any follow-up comments or questions, you can post right here or email us at connect@mindfuel.com. Thibaut, thank you again so much for making time to share your wonderful story with us today. And to the audience, thank you all, as always, for joining. happy and healthy training, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a
Bye.
lot, Laura.